Let's be brutally honest. When a woman you care about starts ignoring you, it doesn't just sting, it rips something out of you. You replay every moment in your head, wondering what you did wrong, trying to decode the silence like it's some kind of test you were never told existed. You check your phone every few minutes, her name lingering in your mind like a ghost. And the cruel part? The more you try to fix it, the more she pulls away. But here's the truth no one tells men. Silence is not just distance, it's control. When she ignores you, she's watching what you'll do with her absence. And most men fail that test instantly. They chase, they text, they explain, they beg for attention that should have been freely given. But the more you chase, the smaller you become in her eyes. Because in her world, attention is currency. And the man who spends it recklessly always ends up broke. When a woman withdraws, she's measuring your emotional strength. She wants to see if your world collapses without her presence, or if you can stand unshaken in the storm. You think she's ignoring you because she's lost interest, but sometimes she's testing if you're the kind of man who can handle emotional uncertainty. Because deep down, women crave men who can stay calm when they turn cold. It's in those moments she decides if she can trust your strength or if she can control you with silence. The man who reacts emotionally gives her all the power. The man who stays grounded reverses it. You see, indifference is not weakness. It's attraction in disguise. Women respect men who don't crumble when they're ignored. They feel curiosity, even fear, when a man doesn't chase. Because the moment you stop trying to convince her of your worth, she starts to wonder why she's no longer the center of your attention. And that confusion is the seed of attraction being replanted. When she ignores you, act like this. You do nothing. You don't explain. You don't defend. You don't ask what's wrong. You shift your focus back to your purpose. You let her absence echo in the silence she created. Because a woman's mind cannot handle the mystery of a man who doesn't need her validation. She'll start to question what changed. She'll notice your calmness. And that's when the dynamic flips. She goes from controlling the silence to fearing it. The reason this works isn't manipulation, it's energy alignment. You stop giving her the emotional reaction she expected. Instead, you show her that your peace doesn't depend on her attention, and that shakes her core. Every woman instinctively chases the feeling of security. And paradoxically, that's found in the man who doesn't depend on her emotionally. She may not admit it, but when you withdraw with quiet confidence, she feels something powerful: respect. So next time she ignores you, remember this. Silence isn't your enemy. It's your greatest weapon. The man who doesn't react wins. The man who doesn't chase commands attention. And the man who can walk away without bitterness becomes unforgettable. Because strength in the face of rejection isn't coldness, it's power. The kind of power women feel even when you say nothing. When she ignores you, don't chase her. Chase your purpose. Build your mind, your body, your discipline. Because once you shift your energy from seeking her validation to building your value, she'll feel the shift instantly. You'll stop orbiting around her, and she'll start wondering if she lost a man she'll never find again. You reverse female psychology not by outsmarting her, but by mastering yourself. Remember this: she can only ignore what needs her more than she needs it. Be the man who doesn't need it at all. Would you still text her, or would you let her silence speak for itself? Comment your answer below, and if this message hit something deep, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with a man who needs to hear it. Let's pull back the curtain, because what most men never realize is that when a woman ignores you, she's not just testing your patience, she's testing your value. She's trying to feel what it's like if you disappear, to see whether your energy still lingers when your presence fades. And most men fail here, because they try to remind her of their worth through words, through chasing, through desperate gestures. But a man's true worth is never spoken, it's felt. When you stop chasing, something fascinating happens in her psychology. At first, she feels relief. She tells herself, "Good, he finally got the message." But then, time passes. The silence doesn't break. You're not watching her stories, you're not texting, you're not orbiting her world anymore. That relief turns into confusion, then curiosity, then anxiety. Because women don't expect men to stay silent when they pull away. They expect a reaction: anger, confusion, begging, jealousy. But when she gets none of it, she feels something she can't control: uncertainty. And uncertainty is the root of attraction. The moment she starts wondering what you're doing, who you're with, and why you're not chasing, she starts feeling the same emotions you once felt when she ignored you. That's the power of stillness. It flips the emotional equation completely, but here's the catch. Your silence only holds power when it's backed by purpose. If you're just pretending not to care while secretly checking her page every hour, your energy betrays you. Women sense that, they feel it, because silence without strength is just avoidance, but silence built on focus, confidence, and peace, that's magnetism. You have to let your life become louder than her absence. Hit the gym harder, spend more time building something that outlasts emotional games: your craft, your business, your discipline. Start improving your lifestyle, your appearance, your circle, because the more your world expands, the smaller her silence feels. She'll sense the shift, she'll feel the gap between the man she thought she could control and the man she now can't reach. And that's when the pendulum swings, when your growth becomes the punishment her ego never saw coming. See, women don't regret losing attention. They regret losing admiration. When you stop chasing her and start evolving, she sees the version of you she didn't believe you could become. And that realization burns deeper than any text you could send. You're not teaching her a lesson. You're teaching yourself that your peace isn't for sale. You're showing her that your time is valuable, your energy is sacred, and your worth doesn't need her recognition. And here's the truth that stings. You were never supposed to win her through effort. You were supposed to win her through presence. But when that presence turns into pressure, she runs. When that presence becomes peace, she returns. Because no woman can resist the gravity of a man who moves with calm certainty. The kind of man who doesn't chase, he attracts. Who doesn't react, he decides. Who doesn't beg for attention, he commands respect. So when she ignores you, don't match her silence with weakness. Match it with focus. Don't compete for her attention. Compete with your own potential. Every time you resist the urge to reach out, you reclaim another piece of your power. Every moment you stay centered, she feels your absence louder than any words you could send. Because true reversal doesn't happen when she comes back. It happens when you no longer care if she does. That's the secret women never tell men. They're drawn not to the man who needs them, but to the man who's complete without them. The man who doesn't fold when ignored, but refines himself. The man who lets silence build intrigue instead of insecurity. That's the kind of man she never truly gets over. So ask yourself, when she ignores you, do you become the storm? Or do you become the calm that makes her crave your warmth again? If this opened your eyes, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe. Because the truth gets deeper from here, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Here's a truth most men can't handle. A woman will ignore you the moment she feels your energy chasing her more than your purpose. And it's not because she's cruel, it's because women are instinctively drawn to emotional strength. When she senses you slipping from grounded confidence into neediness, her attraction doesn't fade. It dies. You can't negotiate desire. You can't convince her to feel something she's already lost respect for. The only way to reawaken it is to become the man who doesn't need her to feel whole again. When she ignores you, she's subconsciously asking one question: are you strong enough to exist without me? Because if the answer is no, her attraction collapses. It's not about the message you didn't send or the call you didn't make. It's about the vibration you're giving off. Neediness pushes her away because it whispers insecurity. Detachment pulls her closer because it screams confidence. The paradox is simple. The moment you stop trying to prove your worth to her is the moment she starts to see it again. So, when she pulls back, don't go proving you care. Go proving you're capable, not to her, but to yourself. Stop measuring your value by her attention and start measuring it by your progress. Every time you resist the urge to chase, you're training your emotional muscles. Every moment you stay silent instead of reacting, you're sharpening your presence. Because power isn't loud, it's controlled. And that calm, grounded energy is what women remember when everyone else is begging for attention. Think about it. The men women talk about years later aren't the ones who begged for another chance. They're the ones who walked away with quiet strength and built something unshakable. The ones who didn't fold when ignored. The ones who turned heartbreak into evolution. That's what she ends up respecting. Not the apology, not the explanation, but the transformation. And here's what most don't realize. When she ignores you, she's also feeling something. Because silence cuts both ways. While you're wondering if she's moved on, she's wondering if you still care. While you're checking your phone, she's checking your energy. And when that energy changes, when she feels your absence without your words, it hits her in ways no text ever could. She starts to question if she overplayed her hand. She wonders if she lost her power over you. And that fear becomes the beginning of her regret. But this only happens if your silence is real, not a strategy. If you're pretending not to care just to get her back, she'll feel it. But if you truly start prioritizing your peace, she'll feel that even deeper. Because a man who's genuinely centered carries a frequency that women can't resist. Calm confidence mixed with mystery. That's what makes her reach out again. That's what makes her replay memories in her head. That's what makes her wonder, did I lose him for good? And this is where you win. Not by trying to make her jealous, not by posting fake confidence online, but by actually evolving in her absence. When you become the man she once dreamed of, but didn't believe you could be, her silence will turn into curiosity, and her curiosity into pursuit. But by then, something changes in you. You no longer want her validation, because you've outgrown the version of yourself that once needed it. That's when true power begins. So don't see her silence as rejection. See it as a mirror reflecting your next level. Because every time a woman withdraws, life is asking you, will you rise or will you react? The men who rise become legends in their own stories. The men who react become footnotes in hers. Now ask yourself, if she came back tomorrow, would you still want her? Or would you be too focused on becoming the man she should have never ignored? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this message hit you deep, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with a brother who's still chasing someone who's already looking back in regret. Let's strip it down to raw truth. A woman ignoring you isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's protection. She's protecting her ego, her emotions, or her illusion of control. But to you, it feels like rejection. That's why most men spiral. They mistake silence for finality. But the reality is, when she ignores you, she's watching how you handle yourself in the void she created. Because that's when your true character surfaces. Will you become desperate? Or will you become dangerous? Not in a toxic way, but in a calm, unshakable way that commands respect without saying a word. See, women crave emotional security. And paradoxically, they test for it through emotional chaos. When she ignores you, she's subconsciously creating distance to see if you can hold your ground. Can you stay composed when her energy disappears? Can you stay patient when her attention fades? Because most men fail that test instantly. They blow up her phone, beg for answers, or post things online trying to get a reaction. But what they don't realize is this. Every time you chase, you teach her that she can control your emotions. Every time you react, you hand her the steering wheel of your self-worth. But when you stay calm, when you don't flinch, don't chase, don't break, you show her something rare, a man who isn't emotionally dependent. That's what flips the game. Because deep down, women respect what they can't easily affect. They're drawn to mystery, to stability, to a man whose silence carries power, not pain. The moment she realizes her distance doesn't move you, she starts to feel something unexpected, loss, because now she's the one replaying the moments. She's the one checking your social media. She's the one wondering why the man who once gave her everything is suddenly unavailable. That's when the regret creeps in. But here's the key. You can't fake this shift. You have to mean it. You have to actually start valuing yourself more than her opinion, because your confidence has to be built on reality, not performance. While she's silent, you evolve. You grow sharper. You focus on your mission. You spend time with people who bring peace instead of confusion. You stop living in emotional reaction mode and start living in purpose mode. That's the turning point, when your energy goes from chasing her to chasing your potential. That's when your silence becomes magnetic. You don't have to post quotes about self-worth. You don't have to prove you've moved on. Your life starts speaking louder than your words ever could. And when she notices the change, when she realizes you're no longer waiting, she'll test again. She might text you something random, trying to see if she still matters. That's where most men collapse. But you respond from strength, not emotion. You don't ignore her out of spite. You respond with calm confidence. No neediness, no bitterness, no proving, just composure. Because that's how she learns she's no longer your center of gravity. You've outgrown the emotional space she used to control. And that's the moment she feels what you once felt, uncertainty. Suddenly, you become the one she can't read, the one she can't predict, the one she thought she could replace but can't forget. And that's the cruel irony of female psychology. She loses interest when you chase, but she becomes obsessed when you don't. Not because you're playing games, but because your detachment forces her to face her own feelings. You want to reverse the power? Do nothing with confidence. That's what she can't handle. Because while you're silent, she's battling questions that never end. Why isn't he chasing me? Did I lose him? Does he even care anymore? And those questions are how women fall back into attraction. So remember this, your silence is not weakness, it's your statement. Your peace is not passivity, it's your proof of strength. You don't win a woman back by chasing her, you win her respect by mastering yourself. Now think about this, if you stopped chasing every woman who ignores you, how much energy would you have left to build yourself into the man no woman could ignore? Comment your truth below. And if this message spoke to something deep inside you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with a man who's learning to walk away with power. Let's end this with the truth most men never want to face. The reason her silence hurts so much isn't because she stopped caring. It's because you started basing your worth on her attention. You gave her emotional access that she didn't fully earn. You tied your peace to her presence. And when she pulled it away, it felt like losing a piece of yourself. But what if I told you that pain was the exact thing you needed to wake up? Because the silence you hate so much is actually the mirror showing you who you really are without validation. When a woman ignores you, it's not the end, it's the test. The moment you realize your emotions are being pulled like strings, you're standing at a crossroads. One path leads to weakness, chasing, begging, explaining. The other leads to strength, stillness, focus, elevation. You have to understand this. You can't control her, but you can control your energy. You can't demand respect, but you can live in a way that commands it. The man who learns to stay calm in the storm never loses, because even if she walks away, he still has himself. And that's the secret. The most attractive thing a man can show a woman is not how much he wants her. It's how little he needs her. Not because he doesn't care, but because he values himself enough to never chase what's running. Women respect men who are selective with their attention, because attention is power. When you give it freely to someone who disrespects it, you teach her to see you as less. But when you withdraw it, not in anger, but in peace, you remind her what true masculine energy feels like. Calm, stable, rare. Most men never recover from being ignored because they stay trapped in emotional reaction. But the real ones, they use that silence as fuel. They let it build their discipline. They use the rejection as a reason to refine every part of their life. Mind, body, purpose, presence. They stop living for women's approval and start living for their own evolution. And ironically, that's when women start noticing them again. Not because they changed for her, but because they became something bigger than her. You want to reverse female psychology? Stop playing her game. Start mastering your own. When she ignores you, let it be the moment you upgrade your focus, your routine, your mindset. Don't post quotes. Don't chase closure. Don't talk about leveling up. Do it. Let your silence become your proof. Let your improvement be the closure, because the man who can disappear into purpose is the man who can reappear with power. You'll know you've truly won when her silence no longer affects your peace, when her absence no longer disturbs your rhythm, when you stop wondering what she thinks and start building a life that makes her wonder why she ever let you go. That's not ego. That's self-mastery, because the real revenge is evolution. The real power is peace. The real victory is walking away with dignity still intact and purpose still burning. And here's something you won't hear in most videos. Not every woman who ignores you deserves another chance. Sometimes the silence is the universe doing for you what you couldn't do for yourself. Sometimes losing her is the only way you could find you. The version of you that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't break. The version that no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. So let her ignore you. Let her play her games. Because while she's testing you, you're transforming. And one day, when she looks back and sees how far you've come, it won't be bitterness she feels. It'll be regret. Regret for doubting your worth. Regret for taking your presence for granted. Regret for realizing too late that you were the kind of man who doesn't come twice in a lifetime. And when that moment comes, don't rub it in. Just smile. Because you didn't lose her. She lost the chance to stand beside a man who finally found himself. Now tell me, if she started ignoring you today, would you crumble? Or would you rise? Comment your truth below. And if this hit you deep, if it reminded you of your power, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with a man who needs to remember. Silence is never the end. It's the beginning of strength.